Hey guys, I'm Dani Castellano, and this is Diet Culture. Nick is here with me today, and we are talking about lifestyle changes, how they actually are diets, the diet Noom, and how to challenge your biases of fat phobia and start to make a shift because that's really what underlies the majority of diet culture problems. This was a good episode. We're doing this intro right after recording, and I have good vibes about it, so I hope that you enjoy as much as we did. Hey, Nick.
Hey Dan, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's Saturday afternoon, just having my second cup of coffee and hanging out.
Very nice. So, last night when I was on my way home from work, as I do, I was thinking about diet culture things that really make me angry. And I started to draft a post of it, but I realized this would be a better episode to really get into more detail on. So, what was really frustrating me, and I have no idea like what my train of thought was that led me to this, but how lifestyle changes, quote unquote, are often just diets in disguise. And the reason that I felt like that was too complicated to just write in one post, uh, because I'm a little wordy with my explanations, is that I think it really seems well intentioned. And so to just make a statement about that without having the space to really back up where I'm coming from, I think it could come across a little like just not super helpful if you aren't understanding of that. Like, if it's something you're aware of and you saw it, it's like, okay, great reminder. But if you aren't understanding why I would say something like that, I think it could be kind of short. So basically, over the past, I don't know how many years, I feel like the majority of us have realized that diets don't work. So we've kind of made this shift, and it was something I really noticed as an outpatient dietitian working in a private practice, that we're referring to changes that anyone makes for often the end goal of weight loss. We're referring to them as lifestyle changes. And some of the professionals in the anti-diet space kind of refer to this stuff as the wellness diet, so that's something people may have heard before. And I just wanna talk about, like, why that's not a super health promoting thing or something that gets you out of diet culture, so it's kind of twofold because obviously the point of this podcast is to give more evidence and or plant seeds for people who are wanting to leave diet culture behind. And then I also realized that there's going to be a whole camp of people who aren't ready for that yet, but may be curious why a dietitian would be saying that making lifestyle changes for weight loss could be harmful. So I was curious, just like starting that. I know you have some understanding of this stuff just because of me, but like what are the thoughts that are turning for you so far just in hearing kind of where I'm getting at without getting into it yet?
Yeah, well, I mean, lifestyle change was basically like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that that was something that you used unironically like a few years back because
Yeah.
basically lifestyle change was the like more politically correct way to say diet. Like that's
Mhm.
my understanding. But if you take that into account, right? Because if it's if your goal is weight loss and you're making a lifestyle change is like what you do. That's your end goal. That's your through point. It's your lifestyle. So
Right.
your lifestyle then becomes like proverbial weight loss question mark. So
Yeah.
doesn't check out. But yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah. I certainly used to use that. I think I was bought into that, like, personally, and thought, like, "Oh, if we use positive words,
Well, and
that."
I understand too, it was also more than just the political. correct aspect of it. It was trying to be like, um, "Hey, you can't like, salad for a week won't work. It's salad for the rest of your life."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's also what it was, right?
Yeah, in a sense, because essentially we're realizing that fad diets is something that you do for a brief amount of time for a quick amount of weight loss or results is not going to be sustainable. So we changed it to be like, okay, whatever you do, you have to do it forever in order to keep the weight off. And we have to call that something different and have to approach it differently. But that's what I wanna talk about is, like, why that gets so sticky because we can't just, like, trick our bodies and, like, change science because we are so fat phobic that we're just, like, so determined that something's gonna give. So this is something you're gonna hear from me all the time, but we have evidence that long-term weight loss is not sustainable for 95 plus percent of people. So, kind of an estimate is like after a 5-year mark, we don't have evidence to say that people can keep weight off. And oftentimes with fad diets, you hear stories, and I've witnessed this with people when I worked in outpatient that gain it much quicker. Because essentially, if you make a change in something you're doing, oftentimes it's a calorie deficit, right? You are going to go back to like how your body was before if you stop doing that thing. And it's actually quite dangerous to follow at most of these diets that exist for I mean, I think they're dangerous from the get-go, but for long term because our bodies need energy to survive and nutrients. And so if we're not giving it those things, we're not gonna feel good and we're not gonna be well. So the other part that's gonna happen is our brain is gonna be like, "Oh, we're starving, so, like, let me remind this person more and more and more and more how good really high energy foods taste because I would really like them to eat that for me because this is dangerous." And so that's where we get into that piece of not only will you likely feel kinda shitty after the initial "Oh, look at the results I got," wears off because that's like a mental thing. Um, your body's not meant to undergo this or to sustain this, and so that other mental aspect of feeling weak or like, "I can't stick to this thing," it's actually there on purpose to protect you, but because of how our culture is so focused on being disciplined as a moral here with exercise and with eating quote unquote healthy or good enough, you're gonna feel shitty for doing that. And then it kind of becomes this perpetual spiral. And certainly that's not every single person's experience, but that is a really common story with dieting. So when we have this $72 billion weight loss industry, and we think that people need to be as thin as possible to be happy and healthy, of course, we're gonna have to make a shift because if diets don't work, but yet people are still fat and unhappy, well, the next best thing is let's create something they can do forever, and then you can lose the weight and keep it off. And I sincerely hope that my sarcasm, doesn't land as painful for anyone because it comes from a point of genuine frustration, that this is something that we spend so much of our time and effort and money on. Um, so I'm glad you made that point, Nick, because I don't know if I actually was gonna say that specifically, but it really was birthed out of a failure because it's not a real failure, but a failure for us as human beings to just do whatever we want, even though things aren't gonna work that way because it just doesn't, and that's okay.
Agreed.
Um, So I know that a lot of the changes that people make when they're implementing a lifestyle change, we talk about seeking more positive health benefits. And I certainly don't think that that's negative to want to do health promoting things for yourself. But I always like to add the caveat that I certainly don't think it's a moral failing if you don't want to pursue being healthier or if you don't have access to being healthier. Just like it's not a moral failing to exist in a larger body, but our culture pretty much dictates that it is. Um, so I think that's the other part of just saying lifestyle changes or diets could be confusing because certainly there are things that we could make changes for that could be really health promoting, and that sounds really lovely. The problem is that if we're doing it with health meaning weight loss, because for many people that's a synonym, then we're basically coming at it just like a diet. And if you don't see the results that you were looking for physically in a quick manner, because we've been trained for this, and I'm willing to wager that most people who go to implement a lifestyle change have tried a diet before. I think most people have dieted or done some kind of, it's not like a formal diet that they paid for, but done some kind of sketchy shit with their food or exercise for the end goal of manipulating their body. Because that's kind of
I
how
mean, I
we're,
would guess 100%.
yeah, we're taught to do that. Um, and so that's a very different thing. Just wanting to do something to feel better in a see, like, that's where it keeps coming back to. It's like a lot of people would say feeling better means I have to lose weight. So it's hard to tease those things apart, but I think it's worth talking about. And honestly, like, my end goal for people would be to give intuitive eating a try, which has no tie to weight, but it's about healing your relationship with food and doing health promoting things when you feel like, or if you have access to that being something you're interested in once that healing part happens, but to just start being like, I'm going to do this for my health, but also feeling like you're not good enough, which is another sticking point because it's hard to like admit that or to say that we feel this way, but society literally is defining this, right? How are you supposed to do that from a genuine way? Because I see negative motivators as not actually being motivating. That's part of why weight stigma is such a problem. Like you go to the doctor, they're like, you need to lose X number of pounds and then this will go away, which is one poor practicing of medicine, but also like that is literally saying it's your fault that this happened to you. And it doesn't often make people want to go make a change. It kind of brings us within ourselves because that's like our human psyche. Like that's how we work. And negativity and self hatred doesn't propel us forward, even though so much of diet culture is like full of really hateful negative things to try and encourage that and say that if you don't have the motivation blah blah blah, but that's not really reality for I think the majority of people.
Yeah, I mean, negative motivation is so dichotomous to me. Like it strictly breeds uh, a parallel every time that I see negative motivation being used. Like I play basketball with several circles, and there's one of the circles I shoot threes really well, and one of them I don't because people say, "Oh, why'd you take that shot?" every time I miss one, and so I can't. I'm never gonna hit it because they always I don't think I can make it now. They don't think
Mhm.
I can make it now, and I don't believe in myself, and I can't do it. And so, like, but in the other circle at the same time, my friends that are positive about it and they're like, "Nice shot," or like, "Oh, you were open, so good job taking that shot. That made sense even if you miss it. we
Mhm.
understand, like, shoot that better every time. And I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, I think it's the exact same thing. Every time you motivate yourself negatively, understand the tendency to do so, but it's always going to create that dichotomy, that parallel where it becomes a what's the word? It becomes um, something in your brain that destroys you. A complex. It becomes a complex.
Yeah. I relate to that a lot with and this is content for a whole 'nother episode, but
Great.
basically in my journey of giving up alcohol for a year, all the times for the years and years and years and years before that, that I attempted to stop drinking or binge drinking specifically was out of self-hatred of, like, I hate how I am. But until I started to find some value in myself, like, genuine, like, I want to be better because I deserve it too, and, like, wanting to do that, I noticed that and it's still that's why I say this is content for another episode because this is a whole long thing, but basically, like, doing it for the wrong reasons wasn't getting me anywhere, and it was leaving me feeling super frustrated, but the more I've leaned into it being something that could actually serve me because, like, I am, like, worthy of that, I find that such a more helpful thing, and coming back to the dieting piece or the making health changes out of negative motivation or self-hatred, basically, I'm feeling like the healing work has to happen before these things do, which is why I'm such a fan of intuitive eating. And every single person's journey is different, right? Like, I'm sure some people, like, the timing is just right and things will shift. But that's where we get into another really difficult place of like, love your body and do weight loss at the same time. And I still think that's missing the mark. Just from my personal lived experience and my education in treating eating disorders, because we're still saying that my body's not good enough. So, like, and it's not that you have to do body positivity or you have to love everything about your body, but just like coming to that place of neutrality. How can we truly be neutral if we're still saying, and I still need to lose X number of pounds? For what reason? So that's kind of like there's never, even if we shift to positive, I think that's kind of fake. And I think that's a really unpopular opinion, and something that someone who lives with thin privilege, I probably can't fully speak to that, um, in my lived experience, and I'm totally open to that being a possibility. Just coming from the diet culture realm as a dietitian and a HAES provider, I find that really concerning, and kind of false advertisement almost, just like the lifestyle change has pretty much become false advertisement. And I think people are smart. I think, like, we can figure these things out, but when so much of our society and our news and our doctors and, like, everything is telling us that this is what we're supposed to be doing, it's hard to do otherwise and to believe it. And then we put the layer of, like, fashion and all of the social media, as we've talked about, of, like, really portraying value and being as thin as possible. There's just so much of this to sort through, um, and I think it's important to really, like, tear apart these conversations of, like, why this could be problematic, and I'll always lean into intuitive eating as a potential solution, and there's so many books out there that give, like, similar guides, but I think just coming back to even being interested in that is helpful if it's something that you have, like, even 1% desire to start thinking about. Um, while I was preparing for this episode, I also looked up, like, what health is defined as, because we tend to talk about that just as, like, your, like, medical health of, like, if I go to the doctor and I get labs done and they say my BMI is okay, I'm healthy, like, I think that's what I've always thought about health as because it seems that when we talk about, like, needing to take medication for anxiety, then that's your mental health, and I think that's funny because it's like the Britannica definition is that in humans, the extent of an individual's continuing physical, emotional, mental, and social ability to cope with his or her environment, that really is
Interesting.
broadening what health actually refers to, and so it comes back to what we were talking about, I think, in that episode about social determinants of health, how we just think of, like, your nutrition and exercise and, like, do you have high cholesterol as your health, but there's so many more broad pieces of this that we're honestly just, like, tapping into not being a stigma really recently that, like, make up all of this. So, if we say we're doing this lifestyle change for health, but we're stressed the F out because we feel like we're not allowed to eat the cereal we like anymore, or even cereal, period. If you go to certain dietitians, or doctors, then it's like, ugh, like that that's not healthy. And that's where, like, that territory of disordered eating or just not having satisfaction in your nutrition, even if you don't believe it's disordered. We don't have to argue about that, but because I think we know where I stand on that matter. But like, if you're not satisfied with your nutrition, that's a problem, and that's going to prevent it from going long term. So honestly, I could probably talk about this for hours and hours of every single piece that ends up not making a puzzle of well-being, and especially not of weight loss, but I think I've I think I've hit the nail on the head to get my point across. Are you feeling like you have a clear understanding of what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, no,
Okay.
for sure.
Do you have thoughts at this time?
Um, I just wanna touch real quick on the lifestyle change thing again, just because I think, like, um, words are really important,
Mhm.
and, uh that's slept on a little bit, in my opinion. Um, Someone the other week was like, "Yo, I use the term gaslight too much," and I was like, "Well, like we just found that word out, and we
Mhm.
didn't, but like we also discovered by discovering this word and normalizing this word, we also normalized." That like it's not okay to be gaslit, and it was
Right.
something that we didn't understand was happening until we made a word for it.
Yeah,
So it's kind of
true,
a beautiful thing because, like,
true.
I think words are, like, really important, um, and in that same sense, I think words they do the opposite where they're weaponized,
Mm.
and they're very destructive in my opinion, and lifestyle change is just a comical one to me, viewing this as someone with a whole lot of, like, thin privilege. This has had a very specific, group of people, but with the, like, this lifestyle change thing, it's like you made a lifestyle change, you're making a lifestyle change, like, how long does that last for? What is that, like, what are you aiming for? What's your end goal? And then at
Mhm.
what point do you wake up and you hit that end goal? And then do you just take a picture of yourself and die? Like, what
Mhm.
that really, like, peeves me. So
Yeah.
this is a very, like, maybe, like, philosophical side of this, but I just beg people. I had someone recently, actually a listener of this podcast, said something like she's very happy with who she is becoming, and I was like, that's dope, that's very good. And she used the word becoming, and I was like, that's very fantastic to me because a lot of people uh, categorize themselves in that moment, and it's all about like what you want to be, but you're constantly becoming what you want to be, and you'll
Mhm.
never be what you want to be, so you need to focus on the becoming aspect,
Yeah.
and you really truly, and that is, you need to take that into account. And so these people promising like lifestyle changes with these diets and stuff, like, it doesn't make sense because, like, you
You're
don't,
right.
what are you changing your lifestyle every day? Like, are
For
you
the rest
and
of forever.
And so then you just say, "Oh, no, Nick, like, you implemented a lifestyle, and now you're part of this new lifestyle," but it's like, when you're holding a lifestyle over your head in order to get an end goal,
Yeah.
just again, understand, like, dichotomous complexes and how they will destroy you. This is basically at the population that, like, wants to pursue, like, a very specific weight loss and does you're gonna destroy yourself, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and there's so many things that are gonna shift throughout our lives or what we even may expect our lives to be, that we have no actual information on what's gonna happen, but if you have something that interrupts what your current lifestyle pattern is, I think that is also, like, we need to be able to adapt to that without being like, "Oh, I've fallen off the wagon," because then it's still really similar to dieting, and I think that's really common because we might get into a really good routine where we're feeling positive about things, and then something is bound to shift because life is not constant, and then it's like, "Okay, well, like, 1, do I still have interest in doing this thing I was doing before?" Or, like, "What's next?" Because 'Cause you're totally right. There's no if there were to be a lifestyle change, it might be, like, understanding that things can't be this perfect way forever and being, like, open to adapting and, like you said, becoming who you wanna be, but you can't just hit that point and then it be over.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I like when you bring philosophy into the talks. That's great.
Have to bring something to the table, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Um, okay, so this whole thing got me thinking about the program or company or diet or whatever the heck you wanna call it, but Noom, that's been around for the past couple of years, and I think the reason that it's on my mind so much is because a podcast that I listen to and really enjoy, they advertise it, and it makes me wanna scream, um, because that comes back to something you had said on our first episode, Nick, about how, people with influence not influencers on Instagram, but, like, maybe larger than that in our world, are really into social justice and helping, but the thing they're missing is, like, they're still really fat phobic and tied into diet culture and just perpetuating these messages, and it's just, like, it's hard to hear those advertisements. Luckily, I fast forward them because I don't wanna listen to it because it's like, I just think this content is so great," and then we do this thing that it's like I've spent so much time trying to evolve past and to learn about and to help other people heal from, and we're still stuck on this,
Oof.
and we're, like, encouraging other people to spend their money on it, and so Noom oftentimes is advertised as not being a diet, because it is supposed to be kind of like a lifestyle change and helping to educate you, um, on what you need to do differently. It's ki I from what I understand, because I had a client when I was an outpatient who was using this for, like, extra accountability or whatnot outside of, our session time, and they shared it with me, and I kinda looked through it, and there's a lot of education, um, and, like, tips for, like, psychology of, like, trying to help people not, like, binge eat and things like that, which is also gonna fall kind of flat because if you're trying to overall decrease the amount of food that you're eating, that's not gonna help binging, but, I think there's, like, some group coaching and things. It costs a pretty penny. I don't know the exact price off the top of my head, nor do I think that's super important, but you have to pay for it monthly. It's a subscription thing. And while I was trying to do a little bit more research of like what they're up to, when you pull their website up, there's only one button you can click on, which is continue. And then it starts this questionnaire about it says verbatim, what is your goal? And there are three answers. Lose weight for good, get fit for good, and both, or both, yeah. That those are our options. So, I just was like, "This is such a perfect example to back up my thesis of this podcast episode about why this is problematic, because in what world can we pretend that this isn't just like any other diet when the first thing you're prompted to do is to answer a question about your weight goals or your fitness goals, which get fit for good, like, that raises a lot of alarm bells of toxicity to me.
Can I interject just for
Yeah.
a second? So I had to fact check you a little bit, so I'm a few questions in right now.
Uh-huh.
But so the next one, and this is not, I don't, we're gonna get sued or something, but anyways, so I'm a few questions
Well,
in, but
it's there.
one of
We're
them was
just
like how one of them asked my height and my weight, and I put what I think that is, and then it said, "What weight do I wanna get to?" And I put something that would not be ideal probably for and it didn't say anything about that. It's continuing. And then the next question is, having something to look forward to can be a big motivator to stick to your plan. Do you have an important event coming up? And it's vacation,
mm.
wedding, holiday, summer, reunion, birthday, other. No, I don't have an event.
Oh my god, okay, 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 okay. Right, so Noom, if any of you at your corporate level ever come across this episode, please don't sue us. Let's have a conversation instead. This is my formal invite to you that I would love to chat.
And again, that's, is what it is. I just, again, definitely would encourage not that. Oh, man. It's just funny too because in the middle there, and again, back to the first episode point, but it literally in the middle there, it was like, "What's your height? What's your weight?" And it was
Yeah.
like, "What's your gender?" And then it has this little blip, and it's like it explains gender and the difference between sex and gender, and then it's a very, like, positive, like, non-binary thing where it's like, "Let's break down this role," and it's like, "Now that we're done breaking that, let's get right back into the norms." But anyways,
Fat phobia.
yeah.
But we're okay if you don't relate to just being male or female.
Oh,
Oh my
man.
god. I I clicked a couple questions in, but I got angry, and so I stopped clicking, so I'm so glad that you were able to continue to let us know what it was asking. And I think that's, like, those are such, like I was saying, like, a toxic red flag. It's such like, companies will you can see right through them immediately if you start to, like, have a lens for diet culture and fat phobia, because if this was really just about, like, health as a broad spectrum term, why is that the first question? So, clearly, this is about weight loss, and I'm so curious, like, the get fit for good part, like, is that meaning, like, you're shredded enough to see your muscles? Or, like, I'm just so curious, like, what is that relating to, for people? Because, again, you don't need to lose weight to be fit. Uh, you need to practice fitness and movement that feels hopefully positive for you.
Fitness, love into your life and
Yes.
self-worth.
Yes.
No, real quick, yeah, I have, like, people, and now when you know people, you know everything about them because it's all over social media and you're texting them and you're hanging out with them,
Mhm.
and there's so much to know about people constantly and the tiny things going on in their lives. Anyways, have one friend who is doing like a weight loss journey thing, and they're a very extroverted friend, and so they're very public about it.
Mhm.
And they're constantly like updating a group chat I have about like the positive progress and how good it is that they've lost weight. And I'm just like, so like, I like that you are happy, but I loved you before just as much. I'm gonna love
Mhm.
you on the other side of this no matter what happens, and then on in 2 years, no matter what happens, again, same stuff there. And so it
Yeah.
is so, like, hard for me as someone with, like I would say as someone specifically with thin privilege and post disordered eating privilege where, like, I
Disordered eating privilege.
no, post disordered eating,
Oh,
I
you're
you know what I'm
privileged
saying?
because you're not in the thick of disordered eating.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's
Okay, okay, thank you.
so, but th so I'm there when I can analyze this, but
Yeah.
it's so hard for me because I'm like, "What do you like, I love you, don't hurt yourself." And it's so
Yeah.
hard because everybody else in the whole thing, it's just like we had this party recently and everybody was like they said something about that, and everybody was like, "Oh, yeah, like, obviously." And then it was just the textbook, the classic thing where it was like, I make guacamole and pass it around, and everybody that someone was like, "I'm not doing that right now because 'cause I'm on a diet." And I was like, "That's fine." And they're like, "But maybe I just won't look." And everybody was just like everybody just fell in line to it and was like, "Yeah, we'll just not look at the calories on the chips." And I was just like, I don't know what to say right now. Like, that's so hard for me. I don't know what to say there. Like,
Yeah.
that's such a common theme in my life right now is not knowing what to and I'm a little off track, but that's my
No, I think this is an important thing to talk about. I rarely ever anymore feel like I have the energy in a social setting like that to comment in that scenario. I just kind of fall silent most of the time or try my very hardest to change the subject because I literally refuse to reinforce, like,
but
worth
it's
being tied to weight loss or to get behind those jokes. Like, I don't think they're funny. I know why people think they're funny of, like, "Don't look at the calories and it won't matter, and if you're celebrating, they don't count," or it's like there's probably 1,000 different phrases that can easily come out of someone's mouth in that scenario because we're trying to comically reduce the guilt that we feel for doing something human, aka eating food we like, which is in and of itself really tragic to me that this is something we have to battle. Um, but yeah, I think it's hard to know what to say too. And it's hard because when someone in your life is working so hard on that, and that's kind of like that I mean, it often becomes the thing to talk about for that person, like, that's all that's on their mind, um, from, like, my experience, then it's like, it's hard to know what to say because I'm not gonna engage in this conversation, and it's not because I don't care or not because I don't respect you or think you can make your own choices about what you're doing, but it's just like, I just wish this wasn't something that you had to do because I don't see it as a positive, like, end result. It's more of a distraction and a possible setup for hurt, um, because of what we know about how this works.
yeah, and it's someone with, like, I'm not gonna say, like, a tendency to, like, get expectations and then, like, have you know what I'm saying? It's just so obviously tied to,
Mhm,
like, how well you're doing mental health-wise, but
mhm.
it's not the weight on your body necessarily that's tied to it. It is obviously directly how you're viewing it
Yeah,
and
I
with
would
your
venture to say that
expectations.
has 0 tie, just like we know that it doesn't have a tie to your physical health in most situations.
But anyways, Noom, lifestyle changes, is that what we were on?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much I've said what I, like, wanted to say about them, um, so I like the side conversations that pop up because I think that's what makes podcasting fun, so you have notes and then there's little things that get sprinkled in.
Same.
So I was reading, a post recently, I'm probably not gonna say it verbatim, and I can't honestly remember who I read it from because a lot of my feed is anti-diet culture people, but basically it was saying that it's almost, like, trendy now to call out diet culture, but to actually, like, call out fat phobia is still, like, really hard for people or, like, they don't even believe it or it's not being advocated for, and I would like to take this moment to come back to that kind of being the root of it. Like, I use diet culture all the time as, like, my term of the thing I'm angry at, but, like, at the found one of the things at the foundation of diet culture is fat phobia and, like, genuinely thinking that it's disgusting and inappropriate and unhealthy and immoral to be in a larger body, um, and that's gonna really make this work impossible if that's how we feel, and also, like, how our society is set up, like, there's certain functionalities of our country that make it basically impossible for someone in a larger body to just be a normal person. Access to a lot of things change, because of our fat phobia, and that work matters, like, all these things are super important, but if we don't actually, like, chip away at that lower level of problem, like systemic injustice going on, which is individual work that we have to do, um, we're never really gonna get anywhere with any of this, and so as we wrap up this episode, I want to challenge anyone who has any interest in this to think of, like, one thing that you can sense fat phobia. So this is exactly like, with the Black Lives Matter movement and a lot of conversations happening over the past 2 years. A lot of people have this, really knee-jerk reaction, like, "I'm not racist." And, like, so I can't so I'm tying these together to, like, create kind of a parallel here. We are learning that, like, yes, we all are racist. You don't have to act that way, but we all have that because we're groomed in our society to think that people with different skin colors, especially Black people, are less than, right? Like, that I there can be arguments to this, but, uh, as far as I know, people think differently, but, like, I think that is almost factual at this point. I would venture to say, like, that's real, that's a fact. Just like with fat phobia, you don't have to, like, outwardly be making comments about other people's bodies, but even if you're making comments about your body, you're engaging in fat phobia because if you hate yourself at a certain weight or think that that's unacceptable, obviously, it wouldn't be acceptable for someone else then, right? And so it's coming back to, like, what's one thing that you could challenge and try and think differently of and myth bust and do that work because it's the foundation of all of these conversations, and I think we need to say it enough and, like, acknowledge it enough because otherwise I think it gets swept under the rug, and this is a larger issue,
Yeah,
than just lifestyle changes.
yeah, and yeah, start the conversations. Maybe start the conversations with somebody who you think will be receptive to it. Like, you
Mhm.
don't need to, like, get on the phone with your, um, like, grandma or something who may not be as receptive immediately and just, like, yell this at her, but,
Yeah.
talk about this, do this, and like, yeah, what Danny was saying, I'm not it's fat phobia. That's why we're doing all of this, and I'm not saying, um, that you know what I'm saying? And I am accusing everybody of fat phobia, not on an individual basis. I'm
Of
accusing us as a
yeah.
society as succumbing to
Yes.
what and, we kinda all did this to ourselves over, like, thousands, hundreds, however many years, but, like, it's there. Well, just like because what I would ask you to do then is give me other reasons, and you would say, like, health, doctors, and then just break it down a little bit more and examine all of it and just I think that you will come to the realization that fat phobia is the driving force there.
Yeah,
Um,
and the one resource that's really helpful, is Health at Every Size, the book by Lindo Bacon, and they also have a book called Body Respect. I want to make sure I'm saying that correctly. Yes. I haven't fully read the text Health at Every Size, but I did read Body Respect. And they're both, I know, to be really helpful texts to kind of give some evidence in the contrary of all the things that we think we know. And then one other offering I have is I was, you goodness, a while ago doing some continuing education, and there was this activity in a body neutrality um, webinar about your biases of yourself or your weight or of what you think of fat people, kind of however that best applies to you. And the objective of this uh, activity, which may seem really intense, is to write down all the things that you believe to be true about someone in a larger body, whether it's about yourself or someone else, and then to find something to myth bust that with, because I promise you there is there is something, because these are all just things we hold, that we've been taught, but they're not truths. And just starting there of like, hmm, like that's interesting, and trying to make a shift. And those are two things that I can offer. Certainly everyone's work is individual, but I think doing that in a safe space, whether that's independently with a therapist, with a friend or a loved one or a confidant that you can trust and don't think would go off the deep end about a conversation like this, like Nick said, would probably be helpful at first. I think those are really important places to start. There's a Harvard has this implicit bias test, um, where basically it analyzes your bias based on it's done in a sense of like different words and images, and you have to click on things, and if you click faster on certain things versus other ones, it's basically proving from what I understand of it that like you hesitated to associate those things, which means you have a bias towards oftentimes a certain body shape based on your lived experience. And it's really interesting because when I took that, I got a score that was a lot different than what I would have just been like, oh, I think all bodies are good bodies. And my implicit bias test, which this is a free thing you can do, did not come out that way. And I was like, I was feeling hurt. I was like, "Oh, man, like, I'm a shitty person, like, what the heck?" And then it was like, "Okay, well, that just means you have more work to do." And I hope that everyone can extend compassion to themselves on that, because it's necessary, and so if you get stuck in a place of, like, "I'm not a bad person, I don't think there's anything wrong with people being fat," like, we're missing the mark there.
well, uh, I mean, again, with the like, LOL at the becoming thing, again, at the like, I am a bad person. What about I am becoming a better person? Like,
Yeah,
why is one so much more attractive than the other? And again, like, it's just like, don't try so hard not to view it that way, because I don't know if none of us were racist, fat phobic, homophobic, like, however many things, would we not be, like, hovering in the air, floating, meditating in perfection,
yeah,
in, like, harmony all the time? Like, I think if we weren't any of those things, I would walk outside and I would see it. So it's okay, because, like, literally everybody around you is, and we're like, I think, like, it's okay to admit that you have biases. I mean, like, a bias in itself is like a necessary, like it happens, like biases,
yeah,
you form biases
yeah.
because that's how you like get through life. You categorize things
Right,
and you move through life. We
and
have
then
categorized them wrong,
yes,
and we need to examine them.
yes.
And it's okay. That's my thing. It's just like, do not feel or try, because that's I understand.
Well, you can't make yourself not feel it, but you can acknowledge those thoughts and take an opposite action.
Exactly, like, try yes, do act and reinforce the thoughts that again, that, like, you're okay. It's not it doesn't make you a bad person that you have all these
Mhm.
biases, like, you need to work on them, and
Mhm.
that's a great thing, and then the louder you are about that, I think the better it is for everybody around you,
Yeah, that's
so
how, like, if you hold any of the privileges to be able to do this and you're doing that work and your voice, it matters, like, so much. I think we like to say, like, "Oh, like, my individual impact won't do anything. It's just like a regular human," but actually, I believe that it can make a difference, and if you feel safe in and okay with doing that, like, do it. Be loud about it, because what is there to lose other than to, like, make positive change?
yes. No, and yeah, that is a great point, like, don't go get yourself killed if you're in, like, a hyper marginalized area where you can't, like, speak up about some of these things. So, like, yes, that is what Danny said. But yeah,
Okay. I feel closure coming. I feel like that was a great way to wrap up the episode.
yeah, I think that works. I think I can hang it up on that one.
Okay. Thank you for listening. Diet Culture is co produced by myself and my brother, Nick Lewis. You can keep up with what's going on with Diet Culture on my Instagram page at dietitiandannycast. If you prefer to watch rather than just listen, check us out on YouTube, and we always love ratings and reviews if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much for your support, and can't wait to talk to you next week.